Alright, meiosis is probably the most complicated of the things. Once you get meiosis done, now we can talk about sexual reproduction. The reason why meiosis is so important is because that makes the cells used for sexual reproduction. So first we're going to talk about two types of reproduction. So there's asexual and there's sexual. Alright, so remember we've been talking about this A in front of a word for a long time. The A in front of the word means no. So sexual reproduction is basically reproducing without sex. Alright, many things can do this. Normally you think this is rare because you only think of humans, and humans cannot do this, but many things can do this. Is basically you make a clone of yourself. So like I was talking about those strawberry plants in the last video, strawberry plants can actually just make a clone of themselves. Bacteria do this all the time. That's all they just make clones of them. So this is just making clones. And so they're all the same, so there's no variation. A lot of fish can do this, and it's weird. Fish can actually go from sexual to asexual and back and forth. And this is done by mitosis, and a lot of plants do this. All right, remember, mitosis makes two identical cells. That's asexual reproduction, making two cells, no variation. This is benefit. Why do people do this? So remember when we say there's no variation and all of a sudden a disease come through and you're all going to die? Well, this is good if you want to make a lot of babies at one time. Because think about it, if there's a predator and there's a lot of babies, you might get some, but you're not going to eat all of them. So think of Finding Nemo. Not Finding Nemo, you had all those babies. Now those were produced by sexual reproduction, but you had all those eggs. A predator is not necessarily going to be able to eat all of them, so he leaves one or two left. So there also is a high chance of survival that way. Now that doesn't help you evolve or change the species to evolve or change, which we'll talk about later, but it does help with making lots of babies. All right, the downfall is there's no variation with this. Whereas sexual reproduction, this is a little bit harder because it reproduces with sex, so you need two organisms to exchange genes. Alright, they don't actually even really have to have sex, so that's a misnomer because a lot of animals will just spray sperm and egg into the water, like if you live in the sea, and they'll just combine. So two organisms exchange genes. Alright, so this is bad because it takes a lot of energy, but the benefit is variation. And remember, variation will help a species survive in times of change. Alright, if it suddenly starts getting colder, if some varieties have thicker skin or fur, they'll be able to survive a little bit more and have babies that have thicker fur. So over time that species will survive and just have thicker fur, and the ones that didn't have thick fur will just die off. But the whole species survived. Alright, so it helps the species survive. So that is the first part. So now, what is sexual reproduction? So sexual reproduction has two steps. The first step is meiosis. And remember, meiosis makes the gametes for sexual reproduction. Alright, so we've already talked about this. So if we have the mother over here, and she has 46 chromosomes, and we have the dad over here. Again, we're talking about humans, so 46 chromosomes. They go through meiosis. Remember, it divides twice. And all of these cells have 23 chromosomes. And remember, each one of these is different. Alright, so they're all different. So each one of these is different. So this one, so we might have, this might, just for the sake of it, that one's black. This one's red. This one's green. And this one's blue. All right, same over here. Green, blue, red, black. So they all have different genes. They all have 23 chromosomes, and these things are called gametes. They're the sex cells that are going to be used for reproduction. All right, so the mom over here, these are going to be egg cells, and the dad is going to be sperm. All right, and then these are going to be used for fertilization. So these gametes are used for fertilization. All right, so that's step one. All right, so now step two is fertilization. So first, this has to happen. So each individual has to do meiosis. Again, that's to keep the same number of chromosomes and also to help produce that variation. Each one of these, all the time, every time they go through meiosis, each one of these eggs or sperm are all going to be different. So now, fertilization. Alright, so fertilization is just the combining of two gametes. And then here's another funky word. So we combine two gametes to make a zygote. Not a goat, a zygote. A zygote is just well, we'll get to what a zygote is in a second because I see that. So we have another spot. So fertilization makes babies or zygote. It makes babies with, if this is humans, with the full set of chromosomes or with 46 chromosomes. So twice as many chromosomes as those gametes have because you have two gametes coming together. So a zygote is just a fertilized egg that will turn into a baby. Alright, so this is before it starts dividing. It's basically just a sperm and egg just combined. They call it a zygote, and then when it starts dividing, it turns into an embryo or a baby. But you can just think of it as a baby. Alright, so basically what fertilization is we have the sperm that has 23 chromosomes, and let's make this one the red variety. And then we have the egg with 23 chromosomes, and we'll make this the green variety. And what happens is they combine to make, so this is fertilization happening right here, they combine to make a zygote. And 23 plus 23 is 46. So now the zygote has the same as the mom or the dad, the original amount of chromosomes. So you can do this with any number of chromosomes. You can say this is 24, so then they would make 12 in each one of those. Half of 24 is 12. And then when you combine two 12s, you would get 24 again. Alright, so you can do that with any number. Now, another thing is, we said that sexual fertilization makes variation. So this baby isn't going to get the same genes as the mom or the dad. Not going to have exactly the same genes. And while I have genes from mom and dad, but remember, it only gets half of the genes. So this gets half genes from mom and dad. Alright. But then you could take, let's say that mom and dad decide to have another baby. The same process, sperm and egg meet, but now we have the green colored sperm and the blue colored egg, just because for the sake of writing all those letters. But let's say this one had a big A, this one had the little a, this one had a big T, this one had a little t, just for the sake of argument. So then when you add those two up, you get again 46, but this one had a little a and a big T, this one had a big A and a little t, a different set of genes. So these two babies are going to be different from each other. Whereas asexual reproduction would produce two baby or multiple babies, but they would all be the same. They would all have this. If they would all be exactly the same as either the mom or the dad that made it. All right, so that is what sexual reproduction is.